Over the past 26 weeks, I've been redesigning an album cover for my favorite hardcore bands for each letter of the alphabet. So in this video, I want to dive deeper into some of the album cover designs and go over 3 big lessons that I learned throughout this project. Let's get into it. So the first one was agnostic front for letter A, something's gotta give, and I thought, why not start with an OG band in hardcore music to start off the series as letter A. To create this cover, what I actually did was get the graphic placed in, design the type, add a stroke to it, design these little shapes in Illustrator that were a type on path type thing. And then also it was designed actually inverted, and then I flipped it. So the original scan looked something like this, but when you invert it, when you bring it back into Photoshop after you scan it in, it makes the blacks look really cool, and then the whites kind of have this grayish silver almost with some brown tones to them, and I always thought it was a cool effect you can do. And then for each of these, I also designed the vinyl record itself with the sticker, see how it would look as an entire kind of system, For this project, I really wanted to flesh out each concept all the way and it not just be a flat, album cover Instagram post. I liked using like this sunburst kind of red too to kind of tie it all together and add some color to an otherwise just black and white graphic. So the next one was letter B, and did one of my favorite bands and hardcore albums of all time, Bad to My World by Backtrack. And this was one that I wanted to add a little bit more color in. I used Obviously was the typeface I used for these big lettering, and I created this composite with an image I found online of this dog head, and then layered these bricks and blacked out some of them to create this kind of breaking through effect, and then masked them on top of each other. And I used kind of a punk stamp effect with noise and stamp in the filter gallery in Photoshop. Here were some alternative layouts. When I work on stuff like this, I tend to have a bunch of different versions before I finalize the final one, and then just a simple kind of demo style little graphic on the vinyl record sticker. And there's how the final system looked, and I was pretty happy with this one. So letter C, dedicated to babies who came feet first by Cold World. Pretty insane name for an album, so I wanted to lean into that with a little bit more of a kind of jarring imagery. I did this stippling effect for this image of a baby crying, and then added some red to it. And I wanted to really experiment on this one with pushing the boundaries of like negative space and using a very minimal layout with just some emphasis on a singular image and typography. For the record sticker, I inverted it. I made the thing red and then the black on the sticker, and I thought it came out pretty cool. For the fonts here, I used ITC Avant-Garde Gothic and then ITC Serif Gothic for the ones with the little serifs. And I thought this system came out really cool in its entirety, and this was one of my kind of favorite ones that I did early on in this project. One of my favorite bands over the past few years, Drain, California Cursed, and I actually wanted to do something that was completely different from what they usually do. I'll throw up some images right here. They usually do this kind of really cool Santa Cruz illustrative old school skate graphic style. So I wanted to go with something more in my style with typographic and collage. So I mixed Apple Garamond with Neue Haas Grotesque right here. Just a nice blend of serif and sans serif fonts, and using this nice blue color. Here were some alternative colorways. Ultimately, I went with the white one because I thought it allowed for the type and the graphics to pop the most. Here was the original scan. I just sliced up this image and flipped each one alternating, and then kind of mashed it together and taped them. So in the final scan, when I sized it into that shape, it would fit and create a kind of cool split collage effect. This one, shout out to Black Market for the amazing mock-ups I used throughout this entire project, and they had this cool like marbling effect I was able to add to this one. I was stoked on this one, and Drain actually commented on my Instagram post on this one, so that was really fun and kind of kept the fire in me going to finish the rest of the project. All right, letter E, Unpleasant Living by End It, a band I found out about this year that's super awesome from Baltimore. For this one, I wanted to really push the boundaries of something really typographic, and almost like you don't see a lot of heavy typography like this on album art these days, and it's something that I think is a really cool style. And I kind of wanted to keep this symmetrical effect, blending some of the serifs, stretch type, and also some sans serif up here. I believe I used Dagular for this one, and the G is just so nice. I had the original image right here that was half-toned, and then this kind of overlaid transparent layer of all the type and everything. And when I scanned it back in, you could kind of see the layering effects, And the final system was really cool. This is one of my favorite ones I did in the whole project, and I just really had a lot of fun with it. All right, so the last one for this batch is letter F, Failed Entertainment by Fury. So it fits the criteria for both because it's both F. Amazing band from Orange County, kind of more like hardcore punk style. This one is more abstract and kind of real grungy. And I created this actually by printing raw version on one piece of paper and with the wet ink, placing it onto this white sheet like this and kind of pushing it down like a stamp. And then once you bring it back into Photoshop, you have it like this, right? And then you invert it to bring it back to its original form with the black background. And then I also did that same kind of marbling effect with this typewriter type font in the middle. And I think this one turned out cool. And I liked, experimenting with that stamp effect. I actually got put onto that little trick by Duran when we were hanging out in San Francisco. And really, it's a cool thing you should mess around with. To do that, just use an inkjet printer and print on some transparent vellum paper. And while it's still wet, stamp it onto another piece of paper and put like a book on top of it. All right, so let's take a break for a sec from looking at the album arts itself. And I wanted to talk about the first lesson I learned during this project. And it was just improvements and insight on my overall layout, typography, and use of negative space. And this whole thing kind of got me more comfortable experimenting with new layouts that I otherwise wouldn't have tried before, and really trying to figure out what an album art should actually look like. I think in the beginning, I was a little bit too preoccupied with flexing my design skills and almost overly designing all of them because I wanted to show my skills. But as I got more into the project, I started to look at it a little bit more holistically and focusing on simple images and nice typography and designing the entire system and working on the relationship between the cover, the disc, and the entire packaging itself, and really focusing on stuff that people would want to use for their actual album art, not just what looks cool to other graphic designers. This series helped me grow a lot as a graphic designer, but surprisingly, it really helped me grow as an artist as well. All right, letter G, Only Constant by Gel, an awesome hardcore punk band that I've been getting into lately. Lighten it up a little bit and use this weird clown imagery, and kind of like the only constant around is that, we can have humor, goof around, and things like that. And I used a Cabell Black, I believe, for this font, and then I did this kind of manipulation to the text in Illustrator with one of the warp tools, I forget which one, and then overlaid a stroke and a shadow on the background to kind of give it some more visual interest. I actually used the original imagery from this old magazine ad I found and then just flipped it and kind of morphed the two together and added this cool stamp effect. We already had the yellow and red and the kind of clown theme, so for the album vinyl color itself, I went with blue to kind of wrap up the entire thing of those primary colors of red, yellow, and blue. And I actually have my full design process for this one, an entire video I did here on YouTube, so I'll link that in the description below. And here's the final system. All right, letter H, Songs to Scream at the Sun. This is one of the favorite ones I did of the entire series. I know I've said that a few times already, but I really loved how this one turned out. I really leaned into using some nice imagery, and I created this bitmap kind of halftone gradient thing up here with this nice serif font and just a simple I like the almost reminiscent of those obi strips they use for the Japanese albums. I wanted to kind of use that style. I had an alternate version that used the same bitmap effect for the sun, but at the end of the day, I thought it was more powerful just to use the orange and kind of symbolize the sun that way. The original album art for this one also I really, really like, so I wasn't redesigning ones just because they had bad album covers or anything like that, but just wanted to bring my own approach to it. This, like I said, one of my favorites, and I think this one is one of the ones that performed the best on Instagram as well, so kind of a win-win. All right, letter I, 1,000 Mile Stare by Incendiary. I was inspired for this one by an album cover that I ran into at this local record shop that had a bunch of text on it, like the front, and I really liked the idea of just jamming everything into the cover and almost like something that looks like it would be like an ad or on the back cover, but using it on the front. And this awesome type right here in the Product of New York and the Incendiary was actually given to me by my homie Jake Pressure, or Jaked Up 1800, the various names he goes by. We collabed on this. He sent me these awesome kind of handwritten types that he does on these napkins with ink bleed. So go check him out as well, Jaked Up on Instagram. This is the first collab I did in this series, and I did 3 overall. And it was really fun working with someone, especially like Jake, because he was a really good designer and brought something that I knew I wasn't able to do in handwritten type and then combine it with some of my layout stuff to create something cool like this. And not only is he a good designer, but he's a fan of hardcore music as well and loves Incendiary. So I thought it was only natural to bring him onto this one. All right, Jive Bomb. This one, I went with a more kind of layered art approach. And this is when I was saying I started to lean more into like different concepts that I wouldn't normally try in just the normal world of graphic design. So the original scan was like this. I printed the black layer. Then I did almost like a screen printing technique where I printed then the skull bit, the halftone skull in pink and then blue and then yellow. And I used the classic almost like CMYK colors for this, and I really liked how it turned out. And Jive Bomb's an awesome female fronted hardcore band, so check them out. And here's the entire system. Overall, I thought it turned out cool, and this pink was really popping. Probably the most famous band in this entire series these days, Knocked Loose. I went with Pop Culture, their first EP. So for this one, I wanted to use this strong dog imagery because of the cover. They use a dog in the original one. And I did some nice type with a sans serif. And how I did this was I actually cut out the layer on top, and then that inside layer would be like the sleeve that you pull out. So this is when I was really trying to lean into like showing full-fledged concepts and how packaging design would lean into this whole thing, not just, you know, digital album art. And here is the inside sleeve. Another mock-up from Black Market, so shout out to them. For the sticker, I used similar type to the front and brought in some texture from that dog image, just all the way zoomed in to keep it more abstract. So here's a look at the final system. Like I said, taking a more holistic approach to this world of album art design and showing how it actually work on packaging, not just digital album art. And I really liked how this one turned out. All right, the last one for this batch, Letter L, Organized Hate by Last Wishes. This is an awesome hardcore band from the UK. And so for this cover, I just did these cool, like different imagery that was really shallow, large circle halftones created with, I think I used Inklab for that one. I wanted to mix the sans serif and then some Old English to kind of tie it into the UK roots and stuff, so UK hardcore. Here's the final look, and it was also cool to use this kind of blocking technique, something I haven't done too much in the past. And I also rarely use the color purple, and honestly cool tones in general. I lean a lot more towards reds, oranges, and yellows, and just those kind of warmer, vibrant tones. But I really thought this kind of subtle purple worked for this one. So the second thing I took away from this project was being able to make connections in the music world. Somewhere in the back of my head, I had hoped that bands or artists would reach out and see this stuff and like it and comment, but I did not know it would be so well received. I was actually really surprised with how many people I got in contact with from this project. So many of the bands I did stuff for either posted me on their story, followed me back, messaged me super nice things, or a combination of all those things, honestly. And full transparency, none of this has turned into real world opportunities quite yet. But I do have a lot of those people now in my network and insane leads and just a connection of people that hopefully will turn into real projects later down the line. And I would never even come close to meeting any of these people if it wasn't for putting myself out there and kind of doing this self-initiated series. I think it also helps that I'm active in this world outside of just the internet space, so there's some more synergy there. I went to more shows in 2023 and 2024 than I have over the past probably 4 or 5 years. It was awesome just meeting some of the band members and other artists in the scene in real life, and overall was such a cool experience. So this series has definitely reinforced one of my favorite quotes of all time: closed mouths don't get fed. Back into the next batch of designs. I think this is my favorite hardcore band that's going today. I just love those kind of melodic riffs and crazy breakdowns they have, and they really lean into a lot of medieval themes and imagery, so I wanted to keep that with my own and experimented with some really big type and this awesome serif font that I found and some colors and different bit mapping techniques, and I kept that type going on the inside sleeve as well. And I thought it really worked well as an entire system. Hudson Valley Hardcore right here, and this one was really fun to work on, and it was fun to experiment with some really large type on the front of an album cover like this. The Beast is back, New World Man, a band I found out about this year, and the singer is actually the guitarist in Pain of Truth, Ridge, and he's also a super talented graphic designer who does a lot of album art in the hardcore world, so go check him out too. For this one, I kind of wanted to do a emphasis big on the imagery, and then kind of this Blue Note style, just simple type up here with Franklin Gothic. And here, this one only had this many tracks on it because it's just a little EP, so leaned into that. For this is a composite image of a desert, and I blended in like some of this tree stuff and this crow. And then instead of the rocks down here, I actually blended in some skulls into the scene like this to kind of, you know, this trapped in murder world concept. And then for the vinyl, I did this kind of sunburst gradient between the gray and the black to really lean into the dark themes. I noticed when I used color on the front, like a pop of color like this, or if I had the front be entirely black and white, I wanted to have a pop of color on the vinyl record itself, or vice versa, you know. So I wanted to add this gray in to kind of tie it all together. Here's the look at the final system, and I thought this one turned out really well and something that could work very good for an actual album cover and not just, you know, graphic design stuff. Letter O, Waste of a Man by Out of Pocket. This one was a little bit different. I did this kind of ripped tear effect with these different images that are overlaid. And so since it was Waste of a Man, I got 3 images of just like shitty people. I used Henry Kissinger, Mengele, and I think Pol Pot, just some, you know, bad people in history, and overlaid it with some imagery of like people who have been murdered in the past and things to just really kind of lean into this idea of, you know, waste of a man. And I ripped the pages together and taped them like that to kind of give it that cool teared effect. And see how they were blue here? I used that same inverted trick once I brought it back into Photoshop. So it made the white areas black and the orange, or the blue areas orange. And I really liked how it turned out, and this one had a lot of texture and something different from what I usually do, but still leaned into my style with some typography right here and this kind of blocking shape. So I was just speaking of that band, Pain of Truth, and I did them for letter P, Not Through Blood. And for this one, I just leaned into a really cool typographic layout with some different container shapes. And I got this image of this kind of, you know, one of those abstract like ink blotting things that they do, and added a gradient map to it to kind of create that effect. And in this point of the project, I tried to do a lot more of these sleeves because I wanted to, again, lean into the idea of creating entire systems, not just a simple flat image. And I put some more emphasis and work into the sleeve itself, or into the vinyl sticker itself for this one. Here's how the final kind of system all worked together. I really liked how this green color popped on the image right here and the image up top. And this one I actually showed in this video that I did, No Design Work is Original. Check that out. I'll link in the description below. It's a video about that idea, but also the Pain of Truth design is made throughout the process in this video. So here's a final look at the design, and check out that video if you want to see more after this one. Letter Q, Swift Minds of the Dark Side by Queen's Way. Another one where I leaned more into showing heavy typography. So I kind of alternated between different album arts, ones that emphasize type more and ones that emphasize image more. And then for the inside sleeve, I used just the simple type version with the clean sans serif lockup and this gray color. I've really been liking this kind of 50% gray color. I feel like it's a slept on thing, and it's just gray. I know, nothing special, but I really like how it looks with the black on top of it. So here's a look at the final system, inside sleeve, sticker, and then the vinyl record itself. Letter R, Street Prowl by Rotting Out. Did something a little bit different than I've ever done with this one. I actually created this layout in Illustrator, printed it out, and then did some tracing and overlaying with a marker to create this rough text effect. And I used this giant kind of one of those really big Sharpies to create these effects up here. And here's the original scan. You know, it looked something like this, but when I brought it into Photoshop, I made it turn the background to black and added this really bright, almost Harry Vincent-esque style red orange. And what was really cool is I've been listening to this band for over 10 years now. Here's a photo from, I think, 2014 of me and the lead singer Walter. And when I posted this design, he not only followed and reshared this post, but he actually reshared this photo on his story as well. So that was pretty cool. Here's a final look at the layout. I don't know why this is inverted. Should be the other way, but this one was received really well. I was a little scared because it was something different from what I usually do, but I tried my best to push the boundaries and not fall into what could be my style for each of these, and people liked it, I liked it, and the lead singer of the band liked it, so it was a win all around. Letter S, the last one for this batch, LP by Tsunami, up there with Knocked Loose for one of the most famous hardcore bands these days. And I did this one in collaboration with another designer, Alex, Noya FM. This is how the final layout turned after I was done with it, but originally he sent me it like this. He did this cool handwritten type right here. He had the LP, which I liked, and then he had this image right here, and I wanted to emphasize it and make it the maximum thing. So I changed it to green, blew that up, switched this to long play instead of just LP, and kept his similar type styling for the songs right here. And then overlaid it with a sans serif, so it's a little bit more readable, but also has like some flair to it. And check him out, Noya FM. He does a bunch of music related design stuff. Super talented designer, Alex, and also an enjoyer of hardcore music, so someone I wanted to collaborate with on this project. Here's a final look at this system, and I was super stoked with how this one turned out. And like it was working with Jake, super easy process, super fun, and they brought this great kind of style, handwritten type, and things that I wouldn't normally do into this project. All right, so the last lesson I learned throughout this project was reinforcing the importance of passion projects as a weekly habit. As a graphic designer, I run into plenty of ebbs and flows in my design careers. There's times where I have so many client projects or inquiries I can't take them all on. And there's other times where I have absolutely nothing to do at all. I think that lifestyle is kind of inevitable when you do freelance. So when I'm in those downtimes, it made me realize how important it is to do personal passion projects and keep that kind of creative muscle working so that you're still good to go when you have stuff to work on in the future. And having something like this to work on with specific constraints and parameters not only gives you something to work on each week, but it takes the decision fatigue out of what you should design so you can focus on how you should design it. The constraints I set for this project were actually informed by the homie Struthless, who inspired this project with his ALPHABET SUPERSET brief. The parameters I set were every week I would design an album art with vinyl packaging, and it would be based off an existing album in the hardcore genre, and I would post it to my socials. So that was the scope for the project, and I fulfilled it almost every week. There was some times where I slacked, and the 26 weeks turned into probably about 30, but overall it worked out. When you work on something every day, every month, every week, or whatever cadence you set, it allows you to build this creative momentum and discipline. I encourage all of you to create a personal series of your own of at least maybe 8 or 10 pieces and combine your love of graphic design with some other kind of interest like this so you can marry those two ideas together and create something cool that's new. And you'll learn a lot about that interest, you'll get better at design, and maybe you'll get an awesome portfolio piece out of it. All right, let's get into the last batch of album covers. All right, Big Kiss Goodnight by Trapped Under Ice. Also used one of my favorite colors, orange, for this one. And similar to the Organized Hate design, I wanted to combine like this cool black letter type font with some serifs, or some sans serifs like this. And I thought it turned out really cool. And this is another one where I really wanted to push the boundaries of like what kind of information would be on the front of a cover. The style in a nutshell is almost like make the front cover look like something that would maybe be on the back. That's kind of one of the ethoses for one of the design styles I was working in, and I thought that fulfilled this. And I did this cool kind of weird perspective for the outside edge, and I thought it looked really cool inverted and grayscaled like this as well. So I used that for the inside sleeve. And I wanted to add some more color in, so for the vinyl record itself, we used this orange and this PNG I found like scan of a kiss and added that in and made it look almost like a demo version. So here's a look at the final with the inside sleeve, record, and the entire system itself. Letter U, Matchless by Underdog. Great OG old school hardcore music, and for this one I did a similar style as the Knocked Loose cover where I cut out this front shape, did some nice type up here with I think this is ITC Avant-Garde Gothic Thin or Extra Light, one of those. I'm always using such bold fonts, either super tall, bold condensed fonts or bold serifs. I really wanted to try using something thin, and I thought it worked really well with this kind of geometric sans serif. So for this, I created this with bit mapping and halftones, and actually created this off an image of a kid floating in the water. Then I expanded that out and then duplicated one on top of it and shrunk it so it would be like this cool wave, like kind of framing technique, and then having the other image underlaid under it. And then having this white layer overlaid on top created this really good sense of depth, I feel like, because you go through the 3 different layers like that. I was really happy with how this one turned out overall, and I thought it was a good way to show how an entire system like this would work. Letter V, Fool to the Game by Volcano, focusing on big type, simple overlaid image like this, and spreading out the short album list right here, getting more comfortable with negative space. And for this text, I used a texture, the worn plastisol ink textures from Duran, and I thought it really kind of gave it that cracked feel of like magma or lava that kind of leans into the volcano idea of it all. And then same thing for the inside sleeve. I used this volcano kind of magma picture, but I wanted to make it a little bit more abstract, so made it black and white. For the disc itself, leaned more into that marbling volcano effect, and I used orange with the simple text right here, and I thought it worked really well all together as an entire system. And it's a little on the nose because the band's called Volcano, but I thought, you know, let's just lean into that. Letter W, World of Pleasure and Friends by World of Pleasure. For this one, I really went different and leaned into this white label style that you see on a lot of old techno and house music, because in this album, even though it's like straight edge hardcore, they use a lot of samples of electronic music on the intros and the outros. So I kind of went with that, where you have the sleeve itself with the vinyl sticker showing through, and then an outside sticker on here, and just did some nice typography. And they use this little Oswald character from Disney on some of their album art, so I wanted to keep that in there. I really love how this turned out, and this awesome old school kind of medieval font I thought worked really well with this cloud image, and the bright green kind of juxtaposed with this normal blue altogether was really fun. And this was one of my favorite ones I designed on the entire series as well, because it strayed away from so much of what you would see in the normal hardcore world. Overall, was really excited about this one. So I used this one for X. You could argue it could be used for W, but X Weapon X, it's the straight edge band that Brian Garris from Knocked Loose is also in, and they did a split with this band that's really good if you want to check that out. This one, I leaned into this idea that it's like just a demo and kind of this fighting, like violent thing. I used an image similar like one of the other ones from that British library of these old kind of tribes people fighting, and then I found this leaf thing and overlaid it on top, and did some grungy text on the serif up here, and then overlaid this really big kind of machine-like font. It's called ITC Machine, and I liked the difference between this really old imagery and that really rigid kind of mechanical font. And then for the inside, once I scanned it back in, I did that punk stamped effect you see on a lot of Xerox stuff for the inside sleeve, and leaned into the idea that it was just a demo and didn't really put any track lists or anything on the sticker. And I think overall it worked really well as a system. And this one was a little bit different from stuff I normally do, but overall I really liked how it turned out. Letter Y, one of the OGs in the hardcore world, Youth of Today, Break Down the Walls. They used this image on the original album cover, and it's just one of the coolest hardcore albums of all time, and that image is so powerful I couldn't help but just continue to use it. But for mine, I use this kind of grid effect that kind of breaks off onto the side, you know, like break down the walls and then mask that image inside. The original album art uses blue and red, but they had a version they released with this kind of this blue and this yellow color, so I wanted to use that in my version, and I thought it turned out really well, and I leaned into that same color palette for the vinyl sticker, and overall I really liked the simple approach to this one and nice color palette. Alright, the last one, letter Z, A New Tomorrow by Zulu. Awesome black fronted hardcore band that's kind of slash hardcore power violence, and they're really dope. I found out about them last year, and for this one I wanted to tap an amazing artist and friend of mine, OK Ofamata. He does all this really cool stuff, and I thought he'd be the perfect person to collaborate with on a band like Zulu. And he sent me some old paintings that he did that he'd had used for stuff that I could use for this project. So here's the original, and if you want to check out his paintings, they're awesome. It's the homie, so go check him out. For this one, I had the original painting, printed it out, and then put it into this shape right here, and then did a bitmap layer of dark black over top and layered it similar to the Endit design, so it would put emphasis on that shape and really darken up these blacks and just punch up the painting a little bit. And I thought using this teal color really worked with that simple like swash of acrylic blue he used right there, and You know, some nice sans serif type work at the bottom. Overall, I was really happy with how it turned out. His original painting was so dope, I wanted to use it for the inside here. And it was great collaborating with someone that's not just a graphic designer and does a different medium, because I think the best collaborations come with working with people who have different skill sets than you, so you can both bring what you have to the table and create something cool. This series was really fun, and it was a great band to end with for letter Z with Zulu. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, and I'm curious to know in the comments below which album art was your favorite of the series. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.